Welcome back to the Holosky Podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Steven.
And Kyle.
And it's Monday, Holocult. You know what that means. Beginning of the work week. You're here to hang out with us. It's a good time. Thanks for choosing us to kick it with you right here on this Monday, the beginning of the work week.
We are too legit.
Too legit to quit. Too dumb to quit.
That is very accurate.
Is where we're at. Kyle's back again for what I believe is the finale of
Yes.
The Law of One, the
Yes.
grand finale.
This is going to be the episode you want. This is the one you're all waiting for.
The meat,
This is a good one.
if you will. So if you haven't listened to the previous episodes, be sure to go back and do that, or you are going to not know what we're talking about.
Also true.
So yeah, go back and do that. Check us out all our social medias: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Discord, Reddit. Search up the Holosky Podcast and we will be there. Be an awesome time. Great old time. If you have a paranormal experience you'd like for us to feature on a future show, future Thursday show, our listener experience show, Kyle's got some details about how you can get that to us.
I do, and it's easy. You can check the show notes, even though I know that that's impossible for just about everybody. Nobody does that.
We have show notes.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
Sick.
But if you can remember, holoskypodcast@gmail.com. That's literally the only information you actually need to remember. You can write your story out and then shoot it to that email, which will then turn into its own episode.
And you get to hear us talk about it.
You'll be stoked. We'll be stoked. And it'll be awesome.
It's just a win-win.
I couldn't agree more.
It's just a win-win.
A win-win.
You experience weird stuff. We like to talk about weird stuff. It really does go full circle.
Yeah.
If you'd like to support the show, which I'm sure you do, you can go to Patreon, Holosky Podcast, Patreon. Patreon/Holosky Podcast. Patreon/Holosky. I don't know what it is, but you should be able to find it. There's only one of us over there.
It's not rocket appliances.
No. You can sign up for our $7 tier, where you get early release episodes of all of our shows, ad-free episodes of all of our shows, extra episodes that are Patreon exclusives. I think there's 48 over there now. That's almost a year of Holosky extra over there.
And it'll just keep growing.
Keep growing. We have coupon codes for our store, which we'll come circle around back to later. And the official AI band of Dark Array Media, Casket Breath, releases tracks over there. It's metal. It's also stuff that isn't metal.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of stuff. You have a good time. Check it out. But coupons you can use at our store. Oh, you have a store, you say? Yeah, holoskypodcast.com. Go to the store. There's shirts there. There's hats there. There's stickers there. Buy some stuff. It's cool. Share the show. Word of mouth. Share the show on social media. Share it on Reddit. Write a letter to your local congressman. Graffiti. Everything. Holosky Podcast. Our friend in Finland just printed out papers that just said Holosky and dropped them from a plane.
Yeah, I
made that last part up myself.
Yeah, he did. But I just got pictures from Darth Squatch of him repping us at Stonehenge.
That's sick.
And Loch Ness.
That's also sick.
So be on the lookout for that. I think he even put some stickers up around Loch Ness.
Hell yeah.
Which is pretty gangster. So
think about this.
If you're out there and you run into those stickers, take pictures and send them to us. It'll be fun. Good time.
We have Hollow Sky repped at the base of Mount Everest, at Stonehenge, at Area 51, at Stardust Ranch, and at Loch Ness. That's
it's awesome.
Crazy to me. I hope someone gets a picture of said Loch Ness monster staring at the Holosky sticker.
That would be epic.
Or whatever the fuck is out there. That would be sick. But yeah, 5 minutes and 55 seconds.
Timestamp
For those who hate listening to us talk but still come to our show. You can also leave us a 5-star rating and review because we appreciate those. And I got to shout you out. I shouldn't pay attention to the numbers, but I do because that's how my brain works. I saw we fell to a 4.7 and I was like, what the fuck? But you guys pulled us out. We're back at 4.8.
Get it. So
thank you for everybody who's been spamming the 5 stars. Appreciate you. Today's 5-star rating and review comes to us from our friend Yinup96. Yinup says, wonderful pod, 5 stars. Love the show. I was introduced by my mom, Wendy. Shout out, Wendy.
Hell yes.
Thanks for spreading the holo virus.
Much love.
Who is an avid listener, definitely part of the cult. Hell yeah. She and I bond over paranormal shows, and yours is just another thing that we get to talk about now. She's definitely had her fair share of experiences, and she should definitely call or write in about them. Wink, wink, Mom.
Agreed.
Keep up the amazing and well-researched work, you two. Well, Yinup and Wendy, thank you for the kind words and spreading the word of the Holocult. And yeah, Wendy, let's get it. Write them out.
Yeah.
Call them in. Let's talk about it.
It's a necessity at this point.
It really is.
You have to do it.
It really is.
You have to. Furthermore, I want to touch on something. Hey, everybody. You can go watch us on YouTube now because we did something cool and we got decent cameras and we're figuring them out. And on the last listener experience, I did actually make a video and it's up on YouTube. So you should go check it out.
Kyle has been learning.
I'm learning a little bit here and there.
Learning video editing. So we're trying to make it better.
A little bit.
We're trying to make the show more versatile.
Yeah.
And you can see our wonderful, handsome faces, sultry faces.
This is true.
On YouTube.
Yeah.
The faces that were only for podcasting, but now they're for video.
Now we're just living that glamour life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's going to be great. You're going to have a good time. We're going to have a good time. 8 minutes and 14 seconds. Throwing it to the episode, The Law of One.
Yeah.
Season finale. But it's not a season.
Yeah. We'll call it season finale.
Finale.
Yeah. They can use them, what do they call those? Oh, spirit fingers.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody gets to see them.
The finale fingers.
There you go. This is definitely the episode you've all been waiting for. This is the one I've been waiting for. It's a little bit longer because I was actually really trying to wrap this up so we could get into some other amazing topics that Steve has lined up. So I'm ready for that.
This is the banger.
Yeah, this is good. This is a good one, I promise. So in the last episode, we leave off with Raw communicating with Don that it is possible for them to now become healers. To which, as I'm sure just about anyone in their position would do, they accept. And they're like, yeah, we definitely want to take part in this. This is something we want to pursue because at the end of the day, like at least the way that my brain thinks about it, it's almost like being told, yes, Steve, we are now going to teach you how to do magic.
Down.
That's where I'm at. Why would I not?
Down.
So Ra informs them that they must accomplish 3 teachings. The first being mental work to retain the silence of self, because the mind must be opened like a door and the silence is the key. Once you're inside your mind, you must find the yin and yang. You must find the positive and negative of everything because the mind holds all things. The second is the acceptance of the completeness within your consciousness. This is very confusing for me as a quote from the book. It is not for being of polarity in the physical consciousness to pick and choose among attributes, thus building the roles that cause blockages and confusions in the already distorted mind complex. Each acceptance smooths part of the many distortions that the faculty you call judgment renders. Which, I mean, that's dense.
Yeah.
Right? That's dense and layered, and it's just confusing.
I feel like he could definitely clean that wording up a little bit.
Yeah, imagine...
But it makes sense.
It does, but imagine sitting down for an hour or 2 hour conversation with this entity, knowing this is like 1980, that you're not really, your odds are you're not having the ability to play back this conversation. You know, I'm obviously they logged it. They must have had somebody writing, or maybe they did record it. But either way, imagine sitting there and trying to retain these answers from the questions you had. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah. I feel like, granted, he's trying to use verbiage that we know, that he thinks we know.
Yeah, he definitely is.
And he goes on a little thick, but like, I feel like what he's saying makes sense. Like, the more disillusioned you put to bed, like the more absolute you have, the more disillusioned you put to bed.
Yeah.
Which essentially puts you toward clearer judgment. So,
right. And that's kind of what I said. I feel like it's kind of like you can't cherry pick anything mentally. You have to completely accept what you are to a degree, because we all have these thoughts of confusion. Like, oh, I want to be this. This is what I see myself aspiring to. Instead of doing that, you have to accept who you are and what you are as you are. It's because the way he describes it is you must learn both sides of the coin of whatever it is. And I get into it in a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and kind of jump. So I will end up re-hitting it. But like he uses patience as an example. You must learn patience, but you also must learn impatience. You have to understand each side of the coin.
That makes sense. You almost can't appreciate patience unless you've dealt with impatience.
Right. Yeah. And it gives you like this whole like monk vibe, like being
a yin and a yang.
Yes, the inner peace, the acceptance, all of it. The third discipline of the mind is repeating the first, but traveling outwards towards fellow entities that it meets. And I'm going to try and summarize the rest of the steps, because I think there was 5 or 6 steps, but it's all just so cryptic and dense. It seems to me that in order to gain access to this, you have to fully accept everything as it is. It almost describes wisdom, essentially, understanding that everything is one and that everything has a harmony. It's bizarre to consider what makes a lot. It's bizarre. It's bizarre, but it also makes sense. You must understand, like I said, something like patience, and then completely understand impatience. So it's literally learning every aspect of existence. Ra looks at the mind like a tree that controls the body. When this is balanced within the body's biases, then it can continue with the greater work, allowing the spiritual energy field to open, which is like a pathway. When the body and mind are open, the spirit can be a shuttle for the entity's energy or will. Ra even admits that we view the healing ability as a paranormal ability. Many people on Earth have essentially random gateways open within their spirit energy that allows them to access these types of situations. Sometimes these can be brought to the surface with chemicals like LSD. And we've heard tons of people talk about those chemicals creating these situations.
Yep. I constantly preach that the conscious altering scenarios open up essentially pathways to shit that's normally blocked out.
Yep. Ironically, Ra is like, all right, this is enough for the time being on this subject. I feel like that was their way. I feel like that's Ra's way of saying, you've got your homework, you've got the road signs. It's up to you to dive into it and see if you can progress. Because all of that, think about it. That's a lot of material to consciously think, even though it's short. You're talking 6 paragraphs of words, but the overarching homework of that is extremely dense.
Oh yeah.
And time consuming. It's not something you get done in about 15 minutes.
Yeah. Trying to achieve what he put out there is, a lot of people will never do it.
It takes time. But the way you said that, Steve, I want everybody to keep those contexts in mind as we progress this episode. Because I feel like in this episode, more so than the rest, it lays a blueprint for everything that we've talked about up to this point. Everything that we've researched, everything that we've talked about. Anyways, like I was telling Steve earlier too, this episode is going to seem extra choppy because I'm going through probably, I would say, 18 different conversations. And you have to understand that each conversation that Don and Carla have with Raw is roughly like an hour to an hour and a half long. And they'll say they do that today. The next conversation will be 3 days from now or 4 days from now. So these lines of questions aren't parallel. Like it kind of goes up and down and left and right because there's days in between these conversations. There's thought processes in between these conversations. So I apologize if it seems a little bit scattered, but that's why. So they get back, when they start talking again, they get back to the history of Raw. But Raw talks about meeting up with humans a long time ago. When they approached humans for the first time, the physical form of Ra and friends essentially were tall and delicate. Ra says that you would have described us as golden. We put off like this golden aura.
That's weird.
Keep that in mind. These beings were apparently of the 6th dimension when they visited. They also came from Venus at that time. When asked how they got here, they simply respond with thought, which is bizarre because if you keep reading these conversations, it really does seem that they are literal when they speak about learning to control the illusion, but almost talk about the intelligent infinity as a source of power, which I personally think it is. But I also wonder if this intelligent infinity is viewed by Ra and their kind as something other than what it actually is. Because they're obviously, Ra and friends are obviously of a spiritual community. So they're going to view these intelligent or this intelligent infinity like essentially how we view God and his powers. But what if, I beg the question, what if the intelligent infinity is just a power source? That's all it is. Tapping in is tapping in, and you can manipulate it to whatever degree you like. Or by the teachings, if there is an intelligent infinity, then by all means there has to be an opposing force. Although you look back again and it takes us right back to what I said, the good and the bad are all the same. All is one, because that's what they've preached through this the entire series, right? Is that everything is one. So to me, that would suggest that if you are able to tap into the source, you can learn to do what you will with it. Like, because tapping in is tapping in.
Yeah. Like the whatever the source is, it's almost like apathy pure. Like it has no bearing on what, like, right or wrong.
That's how
just energy.
That is how I view it. And that is, if you read enough into this, that is essentially how Ra describes it.
So, like, essentially, it is just there to be used. It is there putting out energy. Whether you want to do it for the good, whether you want to do it for the bad, it has no bearing on it. It does not care.
Yes.
It just, if you are able to ascend to this plane, you can use it as you will.
Even if it does care, it doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they preach free will so much. And that is, if you think about it, that is a fair statement. Even if the intelligent infinity is intelligent and it does have preferences, the fact that one of its staples is free will, then it legitimately sticks to it. You know what I mean? Like it can say, Steve, I don't think you should do this, but at the same time, I can't stop you from doing this.
It's almost like a fail-safe for it too, because if it only let the light, you know, those that walk in the light or whatever, however the fuck you want to say it, if it only let those people ascend and fully use the energy, all the darkness, all the shitty shit would be stomped out.
And that would also create an imbalance.
Right?
Which they talk about imbalances a lot, balancing everything. So I was going to leave this out, but before I go there, these beings that were able to show up and mess with the illusion. They were able to manipulate, using the intelligent infinity, every particle of light and distorted light to create an illusion of clothing or coverings in the third dimension. So that's crazy in itself.
So are they not here physically? Is it just like a psychological projection
Sometimes
of themselves? Since they said
Sometimes.
they traveled via their mind.
Sometimes it is that. And we will get into that later, but that is a very good way of thinking because it is a reality.
Interesting.
And like I said, if you pay close attention to this, and I do a well enough job in communicating this, you are going to find connections all over the place. So with that being said, I was going to leave this out, but now I have to circle into it. When they talked about presenting themselves as golden, if you Google that, you're instantly going to get drawn into the Greek mythology of the Golden Age, right? And everybody, please mentally put a pin in this. These beings of the Golden Age were created by none other than our friend, drumroll please, Kronos.
That sounded like a gunshot more than a drum roll, but whatever.
But who's Kronos? Who's Kronos?
A guy that created beings.
Saturn.
That's weird.
Keep a pin in this. For various reasons, but keep a pin in that.
That's son of a bitch.
So why I bring this up, during this time, they show themselves to us by manipulating the light. They are allowed to do so by the council that guards our planet. So Don naturally is like, okay, where the fuck is this council? Oh, it just happens to be in the 8th dimension on, drumroll again, Saturn. Even more so, the rings of Saturn, which that in itself is interesting to me because it could be that this council is what has locked Saturn up and is guarding us from Saturn. Or is it directly linked to Saturn? Or is it all just a coincidence?
I don't know. First off, we don't believe in coincidences anymore.
Right.
So, no, it's not. That's weird.
It's weird, right?
Yeah.
And you have to also remember, this is something that I've been trying to remember as I'm digging through this Raw material. Raw will tell you almost every single answer that you ask, but it won't just volunteer up information. So the person asking the question has to make those connections, has to have that knowledge, and has to directly ask those questions.
Which is kind of Saturn-y in itself.
A little bit.
That's kind of the same route that Saturn went.
Right.
Like you got to
definitely keep this mind track.
You got to put the work in.
Yeah, keep this mind track because it is relevant. Don does ask a good question here at this point. So, is there any other beings like us within our solar system? Ra responds with, do you want current time or all time? Don says, of course, both. Ra says at one time, there was a group of beings like us on the planet Maldek, which was a planet that was believed to be between Mars and Jupiter. What's left of this planet is the asteroid belt. Yeah, which aligns up with what Ra is saying because the beings of that planet actually destroyed their planet through war.
Dummies.
Yeah, I may be wrong here, but in my interpretation, it sounds like these beings were on Maldek. They basically fucked up their planet and then came to Earth. But it gets a little bit dicey because Don asks how they got here. Turns out they were brought here by the harvest. And they were brought here by the process of incarnation, which happened about 500,000 of our years ago. So Don catches that too and asks if we're all from Maldek. And Ra's like, there are many different races on this planet all from different places, second dimension places and recycled third dimensions. So the experience we share on this planet in this time is extremely unique to this time-space continuum.
That's hard to process. So, like the Maldek beings got to Earth via the harvest. So is it just their souls recycled onto Earth? That's essentially what the harvest is, right?
Yeah, kind of. But it would be through a process of reincarnation.
Yeah. Into humans?
Essentially, yes.
That's fucked
Not
up.
that they like took our spot per se.
No, but as humans are procreating and being born, the souls come from all over the place. Is how I'm reading it.
Yeah, it doesn't really get into that deep of the logistics of it, but I would assume that would be the case. Or there was chatter that I don't know that if I wrote down or not.
Interesting.
That the guardians of the Council of Nine had a hand in manipulating things throughout our solar system, essentially. So they may have essentially created life forms for the Maldek beings to incarnate into. It may not have been humans yet. I'm not 100% sure about that.
That is interesting. Recycled.
Because we're going to learn a little bit more about that and a little bit too about beings and all this crazy shit. Like, this is a good episode.
Recycled third dimensions.
Yeah. Which would be people who haven't essentially learned what they're supposed to learn.
Yeah.
And so they have to redo the process.
That's interesting.
And from here, they get into the harvest, which sounds like when you die, going into the light.
Into a combine.
Yeah, that was not fun. That's not going to be a fun one. But when you die, you go to the light, right? We've heard that 1,000 times. During this process of going through the light, there will come a time when the light is essentially too much for you to handle. When that happens, time stops for that entity, which I assume means you're crossing into another dimension or you're close to crossing into another dimension. But apparently they go into cycles of this. And when they were questioning Ra, he says that for 30 years, we will go through a inconvenience or disharmonious vibratory complex. Don's like, so at the end of this 30 years, is that going to be when we go into the fourth density? Ra's like, yep, that's when it's going to happen. So once again, we're in dicey waters because when they're having this conversation, Ra is like, Don was asking a series of questions that would essentially be inquiries. Like if Steve was like, hey, so what can I do now to raise my vibratory complex to become more spiritually in touch with this and that and the other? And what steps can I take? And Ra is basically like, all of that is useless because we are in the end times now. Like, so it by you trying to do this, it's irrelevant. It's too late.
Yeah. You're centuries behind.
Right. And
that's depressing.
I do find it weird because I looked it up. When this exact conversation was happening, it was 1981. So do the math. 1981 plus 30 is 2011, which is not far from 2012. And you'll find through listening to Raw, because I'm like, okay, 2012 was definitely a weird, controversial year for all of us conspiracy nut jobs. But if you remove that, so does that mean all this is a flop? You know, did it fail? Why are we still continuing on this disharmonious path? Because we obviously are, right?
I have theories.
I would like to hear them.
Theories, right? So we know the 2012 deal, the end of the Mayan calendar, the firing up of the old Large Hadron.
Yep.
The theory is that whenever they fire that thing off, it changes timelines.
Could happen.
What if all the souls that were on timeline A, as soon as they fired that, they merged to timeline B, what if all those souls were harvested?
It could happen. I think anything like that could happen for sure.
Because if it starts a whole new timeline, do our souls that we have continue with us into different timelines, or do we get a new one?
I think our soul continues on.
Think so?
I do. By the process,
Would we know?
That's a good question. I don't know that we would know if we have to recycle into the
that
third
could be
again.
A part of it too. That could be like as a part of the harvest. Once we swap that timeline, if all the souls on the OG timeline got harvested, and then we move on as a reincarnation vessel or whatever the fuck you want to call it, we just get new ones. We got to keep learning. Keep learning.
And
or if we didn't learn enough, we do keep our souls. I don't know.
I think if you learn enough, you achieve into the fourth, and you keep the knowledge.
I'm gonna need a new brain because
that's a lot of knowledge.
I don't know.
And also with the calculations, Ra does later admit that, not in this particular sense, but in a different one, when he was running numbers, some of their numbers do get skewed because of the time dilation between where they are and we are. Sometimes their calculations are slightly off. So that could also be an explanation as to why we're still, quote unquote, within these 30 years.
Way off.
Yeah.
Come on, Ra.
Do better.
You're a telepathic mental projector. You can't figure out time.
They are intelligent, but I don't know that they have all the answers.
Sus.
Anyways,
I've turned over a new leaf. I'm staying 100% toxic to anything, any off-world beings, any non-human beings that aren't like animals, I guess, but any.
Those are second density beings.
Any off-planet beings catching 100% toxicity from me.
You know what's
we
crazy?
Are not fucking friends.
That is true. And I would suggest to be highly sus of off-world intelligences. But what's crazy, and I don't know that I write this down later on, but what's crazy to fucking think about is, so a question gets asked, how does a second density life form go to the third density, right? And the way Ra describes it is they're taught. But second density life forms are like high-end plant life and animals. So essentially, I mean, Ra uses this verbiage too. He's like, so essentially, it is what you guys would call pets. So think about this, Steve. If you had the capability of teaching Frank that she is a conscious being, if she becomes self-aware, her next life, she will be third density being.
A human.
Essentially, yes.
So we're just somebody else's pets.
That is possible.
I am a piece of broccoli.
That sucks.
That's exactly what I was thinking when you were saying, if they learn far enough, they make it. Well, if we've all made it this far, we are pets.
That's possible.
Which makes sense because we are a species that is starving to be controlled, starving to be told what to do, starving to have people in power control us.
Yeah.
Well, it fits.
I agree with that.
It fits, Ra.
I definitely get that. But as much as I hate to, a new series of questions aligns because of the new conversation. So we switch gears and Don finally starts doing what we want him to do. And he starts asking about UFOs.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah. Just straight up hard gear shift. And
it took me a minute to make the connection.
He's like, so Ra, what's with these UFOs? And for some reason, Raw begins to kind of dance around this and keeps this at arm's length. They informed Don that, we're not essentially here to speak about this shit. We're only here to teach you about the law of one. And that asking who's showing up in these UFOs is essentially meaningless. But they're like, at the end, what?
This is weird, though. Hold the UFO thought.
Okay.
Why is he so interested in teaching humans the law of one if we're already in the end of times, and we can't do anything with it?
Yeah.
You're a nerd.
Weird. It's weird.
You are a nerd.
It is weird. It is contradictive in that aspect of it.
It's like getting an inheritance to $1 billion the day before you die.
Yeah.
Useless.
Yeah. But that's where I think Raw's intelligence comes into play, because there is select information that Raw will keep from people because it affects the future too much. And if in earlier episodes, Raw does state that our consciousness has the ability to dictate the future as well.
Okay.
But
is the end times already set in stone? Like our consciousness?
I don't know that it is. And I think that's why Raw pivots. He'll pivot in and out of these things because he doesn't. It is considered an infraction if they give us too much information about the future.
So at the time of the talk, we were heading toward trash.
That does seem to be what was going to happen.
If you think about the time in the early 80s, what was that? Cold War shit. Yeah, everybody had nukes pointed at each other. I can see where he's coming from.
Yeah. Anyway, so they're like, all right, UFO shit is dumb, but we will talk about it if that's what you wish.
Hey, you know who you're talking to, Rob?
Bro, that's what I'm saying. I'd be all in. But then he goes on to say that all these entities, to which there are apparently 7 different ones currently operating here, are from the Confederation and are here to show us the unknown, as we would call it, to allow us to become aware of the infinity intelligence. Oddly enough, though, before we push forward, Ra also states that there are entities from our planet that have evolved to other dimensions who are now part of said Confederation, which is just interesting. Like, there are these little nuggets that get hidden in the conversation that you ponder about. They don't get elaborated on. They just get said. And I don't. It is Don's fault, but it's not Don's fault, because, like I said, imagine trying to consume this information.
Yeah, and at the time, it probably was just like a footnote.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. And now that I'm thinking about it, it just hits me because I'm reading how communication with this planet is a little strained, because some people are aware of the infinity and some aren't. I also recall another series we did that mirrors this all exactly and is kind of another connection. The Black Cube series. You have a man who spent his life learning all these esoteric things and opening his mind while also channeling an entity with the purpose of spreading its words and thoughts through a fucking book, which is exactly what Don and Carla are doing with Ra.
Weird.
Very weird. Because Ra says countless times that they cannot have any influence on us unless we call for them. And if you remember, in the Grimoire episode we did on the Black Cube, motherfucker he put out a call to entities.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. That's weird.
It is weird. But it is ironic that we have the Black Cube series now having several connections with the Raw material, which shows that yin and yang connection. It shows it fitting into place, in my opinion.
It is interesting.
It's weird, right?
Yeah. It's it almost feels like these lower level gods are just steady competing to see how much of their shit they throw at us sticks to the wall, how much we take in and spread.
But it's also extremely bizarre connection. I won't jump on and instantly say that Ra and Saturn are directly connected, but it shows how important belief is, how important mass belief is. Because belief, no matter how you weigh it at this current moment, it equals power. And it does kind of seem like even if Ra is good and Saturn is bad, they are searching for a belief system to tap into and draw power from.
Yeah. It is. It's like a chess game.
It's
like who can grab the most pieces?
Yeah. Yeah, because and for whatever reason they are trying to actively influence us in one direction or another.
Yeah, I was going to say that too. For Rob being like, "Hey, we can't really influence you." He's trying pretty fucking hard.
Yeah, they definitely want people to follow their side of the law of one.
It's interesting.
And you could also argue that this isn't the case, but think about it. If they had all this power from the infinity, then why couldn't they just make contact without masses? Why do they need to show us the infinity intelligence? Why do they need us to believe in them to help make contact? Why do they need us to reach out to them first?
Like Tom DeLonge said, consciousness is the key.
Yeah. And Ra literally states that if no one would call, they would have no beingness in our space and time.
Isn't that the most human thing ever? We couldn't just keep our fucking mouth shut.
Right.
We're just constantly, someone look out for us. Someone help us out. Someone do this. Someone do that.
How many people are on the planet?
Right now, probably about 8 billion.
8 billion.
Maybe give or take.
I think they would be more drastic. But at the time of this conversation, Ross said there were roughly 352,000 people who have specifically called for him. And over 632 million for the Confederation.
And I feel like these people don't know that they're doing that.
No, and sometimes they don't.
Some sort of like weird sometimes manipulation.
Sometimes they don't. But it made me wonder in regards to religion. But I feel like far more people.
As of 2022, 7.951 billion. How was I so close? I don't know shit, but that was a good guess.
But I feel like Christianity alone would be more than 632 million, right? Like putting calls out into the ether. I feel like there'd be way more than that, I feel like.
Oh, I just had a mind fuck that I'm going to share with you guys because you'll laugh. I was typing in population of the Earth and population of Jupiter kept popping up. And I'm like, the planet? It says there's 61,162 people on Jupiter. It was Jupiter, Florida. I'm a dipshit.
It would be weird if it said the planet.
I'm like, what 60,000 people lives on Jupiter? I'm an idiot. Carry on. What were we looking for? Christianity, members of Christianity?
Yeah, I feel like so maybe I don't know. I don't know where this 632 million, but there are definitely people out there that kind of dance it without.
In 2020, approximately 2.38 billion out of 8 billion people. So a little over a quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. From here, they go back into the Council of Saturn, and Ra explains how some of them do not have names because Don was asking specifically who they were. And he's like, some of them just haven't even chosen names. But as far as the entities are concerned, there are 9 entities on this council with 24 backup entities. The backup 24 are entities that faithfully watch and have been called guardians. And then it switches gear and we dive into something a little interesting because this entire time I've been reading this, I've mentally acknowledged so many connections to various different theories. For example, I asked or rather stated earlier that by their own teachings that people are able to use the infinity as they see fit, which Ra does come out and says that This is the case because they reference the Orion group or the entities from the Orion, which we have heard about aliens from Orion, et cetera, et cetera. But they said that the Orion group has been making contact. And in order for the Confederation to make contact, the Council of Saturn has to lift the quarantine on us and allow it. To which, like, an example of them doing this is whenever we started setting off nukes. The quarantine got lifted and people made contact with us, essentially being like, hey, you better chill the fuck out. You better chill the fuck out.
It's understandable.
Ra does say that the latest ones haven't been them, and most of them are from the Orion group. And the pieces I put together, the Orion group is a not very friendly organization.
So he said, what did he say? 630 million?
632 million have called for the Confederation.
Which, doing the Google here, in 1980, which is about the time this is going on, there were 112 million Christians in the United States. So about a sixth.
But then you factor in other religions as well, because I wasn't just picking on Christianity. I was wondering a conglomeration of religious people.
Well, I was kind of following the same thing, but if Ra was posing as a said Christian deity, having people call toward that Christian deity would essentially be having them call toward him.
That's kind of where my mind was at.
I wonder how close to the global. I can't find the global Christian population of 1980.
But now you decipher it like that. Also, remember this: in the earlier episode, we talked about how Ra and friends. Remember, Ra was designated to a section of the planet. Remember that? And there was another group that went to South America to fuck with those people. There were so. By those that might be onto an avenue here.
That's interesting.
That does make it significantly more interesting now.
Which, I mean, we've talked about before. These entities that I don't necessarily know that they came here posing as gods, but when they got here, humans being humans started worshiping them as gods.
Yeah.
And then essentially you can see the power trip that comes with.
Well, not to mention, like we stated in the earlier episode, a lot of this directly references religion, man. Like, despite how you want to feel, it directly aligns with a lot of religion. It just does. So I find it very interesting. And we get into more religious connections later on. It's going to be interesting to see people's reactions.
I was just crunching some numbers there.
But when it comes to the Orion group, he examples the differences in using the infinite in a good or bad way. He says that if you're using it for bad, it essentially has a toll on you, and they will experience constant disintegration. But their power is the same across the board. Furthermore, the way he describes it is very familiar. It's either use the infinite to help others or help yourself. And that is, ironically enough, the exact same description of the left and right hand path. Service to self, service to others.
Interesting.
It is. So in a wider thought form, people are using magic, essentially. Tapping into the infinite, and those of light walk well, and the ones with the darker intent, we've heard that you have to pay a price, essentially. It's a bit more taxing when you use black magic versus light magic, right?
Yeah.
So there's another subtle connection there, and that's what I mean. You dig through this material, and there are so many connections across the board. It's just kind of crazy. And I know we've heard that with the black magic, or with magic in general, is taxing. And that's also assuming the infinite is the only power source out there. We don't know that there isn't another power source, right? For all we know, there's more than one of these sources. And maybe the Confederation has a price to pay as well. Because remember, Ra, like I said earlier, he'll only kind of spill the beans about what he needs to spill the beans about.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a chess. Like, a lot of what they're doing is chess moves.
Yeah. He's yeah. He is weird about what he lets out and what he doesn't.
Yep. And it's also crazy to ponder that Ross says that the law of one is available to any social memory complex which is decided to strive together for any seeking of purpose. And what what makes that interesting to me is the wording. It makes it sound like, excuse me, if a group comes together to manifest something, it will happen eventually, as long as you're able to tap into the infinite.
Cool, like a collective consciousness.
Yeah, but it also traces back to all the religions across the planet.
Manifestation.
Yeah. Don digs a little more into the Orion group at this point and asks why would they land here? Ra's like, conquest. They're looking for similar complexes and to enslave the unelite.
Pricks.
Yeah. They even get into the Pascagoula landing in 1973. And that landing in itself was neither the Orion group or the Confederation. It was an accidental landing, and he states how they went to the quarantine in all innocence, which I find it fucked up and bizarre. On one hand, cool. We have entities out there that are protecting us with this said net quarantine. But on the other hand, it's like,
took a wrong turn.
Quarantine is a pretty particular word, because the question I would want to ask, what gives you the right to place us under fucking quarantine if we have free will?
Yeah.
Kind of makes it sound like you've planted your flag here. Your conquest is us. We need to reach a vibration of permission like a homeowner to a fucking vampire.
So the Pascagoula folks, the pointy-eared claw crab hand guys, just accidentally got here.
Yeah, and they do explain how that happens.
They wrong turned it. Did they accidentally abduct the two fishermen?
Well, they talk about the entities that picked up Charlie Hickson. And these entities were from the Sirius galaxy and of the third density.
So the same as humans?
They're in the same density.
Yeah. Not necessarily humans, but...
Yes. Don asks about the beings on this planet and from what densities they came from. Like, have there been other ones? It seems that the second density beings are that of plants and animals. None of which are really got to a point like us, walking upright with our same attributes. But in regards to the Charlie Hickson thing, because I think I'm moving to a different conversation with this, but I do recall the beings with Charlie. They took him to almost further their learning of the law of one. Like, they took Charlie to, I'm assuming, almost like use his memories as surfing the web is a good way to put it. Like, they almost like they downloaded his mental
that is so
capacity.
Weird to use that term.
Why?
So fucking weird. Because I don't even know what I was listening to. But the theory was that humans were being abducted to have their memories taken to be put into essentially like clone beings that whatever these entities were putting back on the planet. So they could mimic human emotion.
That's gross.
Mimic just the fact that you said that they were like scanning his memories.
Yeah. That's what Raw said they were doing. It was like learning from Charlie's
so
past.
Weird that came up at the same.
That's weird. That is weird.
But there was a whole theory that they would abduct people, essentially pull their memories, bank them, create the clones, put the memories, not necessarily exactly the memories, but the feelings of the memories, the emotion of the memories, how they handled it, at basically your humanity, into these clones, putting them back on the planet. That way, when they come across similar incidences, they can react the same way.
That is weird because it does kind of replay into this episode too, in a little bit.
It just the verbiage of
Yeah.
pulling the memories and the
Yeah,
history.
because that's what they were using it to learn. I know that much.
It sucks.
But like I said, switching that next conversation, Don asked about beings on this planet and from what densities they came from. I think that's in reference to Earth. Like, have there been other ones? It seems that the second density beings are that of plants and animals, none of which really got to a point like us, walking upright with the same attributes. But apparently from Maldek came a second density form, one which is using our sphere to work out its understanding through a series of karmic restitutions. This being dwells within our deep underground passages. We call this being Bigfoot. Yeah, we're into mindfuck territory.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Ra also says there is another race that is here, but it seems like this whatever race this is.
Bigfoot lives underground.
Yes.
Which we hear could be a possibility.
Yes. But check it out. We're going to go a little bit deeper here.
Great.
So it seems like there's another race here that is more of a vehicle of sorts. They are here in case of essentially nuclear war.
Lamborghinis.
Yes, they are Lamborghinis.
I knew it.
But they're here in case of nuclear war. They exist as a reserve to form a quote-unquote gene pool because they can withstand radiation our bodies cannot. These beings are located deep within our forests.
Chupacabras.
Bigfoot-like creatures, apparently, but Ross says we wouldn't call them Bigfoot. They are very, very good at escaping detection. Ross says these entities of glowing eyes are those most familiar to your people. I don't know what the fuck that means. But we hear a lot of cases of things out there with glowing eyes.
That's weird.
Yeah.
My mind goes in a bunch of different directions, right? So the first place it goes to is like Glimmerman beings, Shimmer beings, right?
That would
so
be
they're
a good one.
easy. They're easy to avoid detection.
Yeah.
But what about all these weird ass orb sightings in the forest?
Yeah.
Like there are hundreds, if not thousands, of people seeing odd shaped orbs in the forest, right?
Yeah.
Especially in Bigfoot encounters, this, that, and the other. But what if that's what he's talking about?
Could be.
The only thing that we see, like the fact that the only feature he points out is the glowing eyes. What if that's the only thing we're able to see?
Maybe.
And they're closest to humans. I wonder if they're physically closest to humans, or I don't know.
He says they're the most familiar to your people. I don't know what that means. They're the most familiar, whatever that means.
It is an interesting verbiage.
Yeah. And at this point, Don is still confused and asked, so there are two different types of Bigfoot then? Or I was like, no, there's three.
Oh.
Yeah.
I love that Ra's like, I guess we'll talk about UFOs, but
we're going to go ahead and talk about Bigfoot.
Dive into Bigfoot.
The first two have already been described. The third is a thought form, which unfortunately this conversation times out and Ra is done. And that happens because the channel Carla, she's depleted too much at this point, so they have to end the conversation.
Which we also kind of leans into the woo-woo Bigfoot.
Yes, yeah.
You know?
And we do touch a little bit more on thought forms in a little bit.
Like the metaphysical Bigfoot.
Yeah.
The disappearing Bigfoot. The walking through portals Bigfoot.
Yeah.
A thought form.
Yeah. And like I said, we get into a little bit more of that. And just,
yeah, now I need to know if there are other thought form beings. Which essentially he said he was because he came via his thoughts.
Yeah. So yeah, there definitely are. And it gets fucking weirder.
I'm leaving this planet.
So it gets weirder. But, and like I said prior, each conversation is a new thing and it plays out differently. So the next conversation starts off with Maldek again and how it essentially goes south. And to be honest, it's kind of fucking scary because Ra describes them as almost Atlantean type people. They had tons of tech and made huge steps forward. But they really didn't give a shit about like what they were doing to their planet. And they only started focusing on service to themselves, which really, 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 really reminds me of the path current day humanity is on. I mean, pretty fucking close, right?
Yes.
So I'm assuming with the mention of Atlantean type beings, Don's like, speaking of, can we go ahead and talk about Atlantis and Lemuria? Like,
I fuck with Don.
is that on the table?
I fuck with Don.
And
He's asking my kind of questions, bro.
yeah, this is great. And here in a minute, I will tell you why I almost just instantly stopped the episode right where I did, because it pissed me off. But Don's like, so is Atlantis and Lemuria on the table? And bro, I was like, yeah. So we're gonna start. I'm assuming with Lemuria, and he's like, apparently it started with the Mu entities, MU. They were a primitive people, but had very advanced spiritual distortions. Their place of living ended up being consumed by the ocean when tectonic plates readjusted on our planet. Those people who survived that ended up traveling to Russia, North and South America. They are currently what we would refer to as Indians. So our modern day Indians are direct descendants of these people, which is cool as fuck.
Interesting.
Not to mention, tell me that doesn't make sense when he describes them as a little bit more of primitive people, but they have extremely strong spiritual connections. Dude, I mean, it's to a T right there. So I find it pretty fucking rad. The Atlantean race which reached a very high technological understanding extremely quickly. They, very interestingly, they focused on intelligent infinity, and he also uses a new phrase, and I don't know if this new phrase is two separate things or it's two in the same. But he says intelligent energy. And I don't feel like Raw slips up very often. You know what I mean? So I feel like this intelligent energy comment was on purpose.
Yeah, he definitely has a meaning behind it.
Yeah. I don't feel like he's picking a new word, because he's used intelligent infinity throughout the entirety of the conversation, but all of a sudden he changes to energy now.
Intelligent energy. I wonder if that's like AI or some shit.
I don't know. Could be. That is a good posed question there.
Interesting.
Regardless, the Atlanteans started manipulating the natural influxes of the indigo and pineal ray from divine or infinite energy, which is a mindfuck, so I don't know what that means. But by doing this, they were then enabled to create life forms. So instead of focusing on healing and perfecting themselves, they focused on this type of shit, playing God, which Raw considers to be negative. How crazy is that? That they're just like, you know what? Instead of healing, we're going to fuck around with making stuff. This is going to be cool.
Yeah.
Furthermore, what the fuck did they make?
That's what yeah. What?
And talk about possible explanations for sightings across the planet.
Yeah, you got Atlanteans just fucking playing The Sims over here, just creating characters.
Yeah. And the Atlanteans, they fell victim to two separate wars. The last one would annihilate most of Atlantis. The survivors of that would then move to places like Tibet, Peru, and Turkey.
Who are they getting a war with? Themselves?
Probably.
Damn.
Yeah.
Probably at war with all the little creations they created.
That is a good possibility.
Just a mutiny, a Sims mutiny.
Yeah. Don from there goes down an interesting road of questioning, asking if people in the third density are for self or negative. Is it possible when they quote unquote graduate to the fourth, they will continue on this path of self-service, which it is possible. So you can achieve other densities by being essentially, quote unquote, a negative being.
Which makes sense, especially if the particular source is apathetic as to whether or not you're good or bad.
Yeah. If it is, like they say, 100% free will based.
As long as you work hard enough, as long as you put in the work and the meditation or whatever, however the fuck you're supposed to do it, as long as you put the work in, you can keep moving up.
Yeah.
Which is in itself very interesting.
Are you ready for a really big curveball?
No.
It's a big one.
Here we go.
So Don's like, so speaking of that, whatever happened to our dude Adolf Hitler?
Don's just winging haymakers,
Yeah.
ain't he?
Yeah. And Ra's like, he is in a healing process in the middle astral planes. This entity is greatly confused and in need of great care.
So hell.
Possibly. Possibly. But those aren't the only ones that get named. Genghis Khan gets named.
Also,
Rasputin gets
dude.
named.
Hmm?
But Genghis Khan is an interesting one. Genghis Khan did go on to the fourth density as self-service and is currently a part of the Orion group
That are also shitty.
that are under or for conquest.
That tracks.
Yeah. And it sounds like he basically has the same old job, essentially. He like the only way that Ra could describe what Genghis Khan is doing, it sounds lame as fuck. He's like shipping clerk for the Crusaders.
You need a new jock strap? Here you go.
Yeah. But apparently it has it's a way more intricate position because it has to do with mind control and shit. So it's not as lame as it sounds.
You need me to think about you need my mental jock strap?
Right.
I picture, so since you got to come up through your densities and Khan's just like this mass conqueror, so I figure in his probably second density he was like some invasive species like honeysuckle or some shit,
probably
just choking out every other plant, and they're like, you know what, you got pretty good at this.
Yeah.
They're like, let's try humans, and he's like, bet. Murder everything. And then they're like, well,
I love that he was honeysuckle.
And then they're
that
like,
shit does piss you off.
there's the first thing I can think of.
It's a good one. It's a good one.
You're a human, murder everything. He's like, all right, game on. And they're like, damn, pretty effective at that too.
Yeah.
Well, let's try this fourth realm.
Punish and enslave.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrifying and horrible.
And, Don's like, all right, what's up with the Crusaders? They do exactly what you think. They come in chariots to conquer planetary complexes. Keep in mind the word chariots.
Of the gods.
It's very interesting verbiage there. So Orion is attempting mind control purposes here, which, remember, can only be done when they are called, essentially because the law of one is under a free will contract. But when doing this, so when they are able to manipulate and influence, they create what we would consider the elites. They then would attempt to control and enslave the non-elite. Oddly enough, and it's kind of scary to contemplate, but these elites will then create an environment where the non-elite will be enslaved by their own free will, which is essentially modern day.
Going to work.
It's modern day, right?
I have been enslaved by an off-planet entity to go to my stupid job. It's weird that he doesn't get into the whole calling on of these entities. Is it like, I'm confused as to whether or not they are being called on directly or if there's some sort of manipulation being played out there.
I think that does get answered, but it's in these very cryptic ways. I think there is direct ways of calling and indirect ways of calling. I think there are people who do it purposely and there are people that do it accidentally.
Interesting. But I'm wondering, like, because they have to have enough people calling, right?
Oh yeah.
And I don't know, maybe I'm just out of touch, I'm out of tune or what, but you don't hear a lot about any of this shit. So it's almost like it's been like the communication has been severed or misconstrued somewhere where people think they're calling on something,
Yeah.
but instead they're calling on something.
And then there's I couldn't process it properly because I'm not a numbers guy, but there is a weird compounding factor in all of this as well. And I want to say like one person essentially turns into 7 turns into 49, and it does this compounding
Pyramid scheme.
Like, yeah, it is kind of like that in a way, but it was so much detail raw explaining this that my brain just could not compute it. So I was like, fuck it.
You did kind of touch on that in an earlier episode, didn't you?
I think so. Yeah.
That's weird.
Don at that point would ask kind of what anyone would ask when it comes to the Orion group influencing elites, yada yada yada. He's like, all right,
the chupacabra.
There is that, but he also says, okay, well, can you just name them then? Name the elites on this planet that have had aid from the Crusaders in the attempt to enslave us all. And Ra's like, I'm not doing that. Saying those names involved in the future of Steve and I, everybody's space time is to infringe on free will at that point. Which seems a little bit like playing the fence kind of, but I also understand it.
I mean, I do get it, but why?
Because that could directly, like, say, influence an assassination attempt or something to that degree. It could influence the outcome of a future.
I guess I do get it. And the only ones he really named specifically were ones that are
not here. He can name those ones. He can name the ones that are not here, but the ones that are currently here, he will not name.
Which we probably all already know anyway.
Yeah, I'd almost bet money.
We're probably already all in tune with it.
Yeah. After a series of questions, it basically implies that the thoughts have a chance of being implanted from beings, whether negative or positive. For example, nuclear power. And this is shit we talk about all the time, which is just perfect. Nuclear power. The scientists that were creating nuclear power were extremely positive people, right? They were essentially, think of them like people of light. However,
extremely bright light when you
shit. So that nuclear thought, in theory, was placed into the scientist's head by like the Confederation, right? Like, hey, you guys are all going to create this power source and it's going to be fantastic for your planet. It's going to do good, it's great. But there are other scientists who are of the negative side that are following nuclear power. They get the blueprint from nuclear power and then like, watch what we can fucking do with it. We're going to blow shit up.
Yeah. Which, I mean, they probably also have beings from the opposite realm.
Yeah.
Putting the same shit into their head.
Yeah.
You know, like, hey.
Yep.
Guess what else this can do?
But it's
level cities.
But and it is that because we've talked about like technology in itself, like how Elon Musk fucking Neuralink could be fantastic for people, right? It could be absolutely great. But you can also see the extreme negative side effects of that as well.
Oh, yeah.
But it does make a full circle to the whole yin and yang of life. Another example of this would be Nikola Tesla. He was tasked by the Confederation to light the world for our betterment. Free energy for everybody. That's what his job here was. And apparently he was a wanderer. But along the way, he becomes perverted and lost his way. He became influenced by outside forces that somehow fucked with who he was, and he lost his way.
Now we all have to pay Amron.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely. Don then is like, okay, so let's talk about these chariots and crusaders.
Crusader's such a weird, like, I guess it's a very,
It's very Templar.
yeah, it's a very, I mean, correct term,
Yeah.
but it sounds like, it almost sounds, I don't know, it almost sounds more righteous than it deserves to be, I guess, in my brain.
Yeah, I can see
don't know.
that. I
I
can
don't
see
know.
that. But more specifically, Don is like, let's talk about the chariots. I want to know about these chariots. And literally the way Rod describes it, it's fucking UFOs. Some of them are elongated ovid shapes. They're darker.
UFO.
Yeah, they're darker than silver,
UFO.
but appear metallic in when they seen in the light. And at nighttime, they're red or fiery.
UFO.
Some are disc-shaped of 12 feet in diameter.
A flying saucer, if you will.
Other crafts can take on whatever shape with thought control mechanisms, which we've heard before.
Jellyfish.
We've heard about, remember the guy calling in and saying that he saw a UFO just changing shapes right in front of him?
Yeah, the cube.
Yeah.
The translucent cube that was floating around Los Angeles or wherever the listener experience happened.
And this makes sense. The chariots vary because there are more than one faction within the Orion group, and not every group has the same ability accessing the intelligent infinity. And being that they are of a more negative group, the service to self, a lot of information doesn't get shared between factions. They just kind of like all show up and they're like, hey, we're going to go fuck stuff up. And everybody's like, cool, bet. And they're, instead of being like, hey, I've got a superior UFO, you guys should use it too. They're like, no, we're good. Like,
we're going to take our invisible cube.
Yeah. You guys take your cigars.
Yeah. When you roll in on your jellyfish, I'm going to take my invisible cube.
Yeah.
That's funny. That sounds,
I mean, it tracks though.
100% spot on.
Yeah, it tracks.
Do any other factions use UFOs?
I'm sure.
Just the Orion?
No, I'm sure all
because
of
the
them do.
Pascagoula
guys they're density beings
dropped in and they're UFO.
Yep.
Why the fuck don't I have a UFO? I'm a third being.
I don't know. I guess because we're just too stupid yet.
He's not wrong.
And we're poor. So we're definitely not buying
He is
one.
not wrong.
From there, Don wants to know about this quarantine that's around our planet. And apparently this quarantine is so strong that no one, not a single being, can penetrate it without permission. They have to get permission from the Council of Nine, Council of Saturn, before they can interact with our planet.
But didn't he say the Pascagoula guys accidentally fell through?
Yes. Every free will being, so envision this. Every being, free will being, which is just every being, approaching our planet will be hailed by the council. If they do not respond to the council and decide, fuck this, I'm just driving right to this planet, I don't need these suckers, they hit the net, the quarantine. And the way Ra describes it is, it would be the equivalent of Steve and I walking into a wall. We would just stop. Right? And Don's like, so what happens? Do they blow up? Like, what the fuck? And Ra's like, no, like literally they just stop. They cannot go any farther. Nothing negative happens to them. Yeah, they just hit a point and they stop. They can't go any farther. They cannot get past it. It has to be brought down by the council. So Don's like, okay, then what's with the UFO flaps then? Apparently, these beings are able to find distortions or windows within our space and time continuum. And they're able to slip through these things. And these openings within this quarantine, this net, they're extremely unpredictable. They just kind of come and go as they please. There's no...
What a shitty quarantine.
You would almost think that there would be a way to semi-track them if they're able to get in and out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do find it funny, though, that they can keep and furthermore, why is the council letting the Crusaders in if they're just coming to do fucking horseshit?
Free will. Free will.
Then why have a quarantine?
Yeah. That gets explained. I'm not sure if I write it down or not, but it gets explained in my opinion, a half-assed way. Because Don directly kind of asked that question. He's like, so
Don's been asking some rippers.
Yeah. If there is free will, everything is free will oriented, doesn't a quarantine kind of fuck up free will?
Yes.
And I think it's like a self-justification answer is what this is, but he's kind of like, well, about that. This is more of just a challenge. It's an obstacle. That's the word. It was an obstacle placed in effect for like Orion Group and these other groups that are there to maliciously enslave us. And that these little windows that open throughout that quarantine, they're not an accident. The guardians that directly work with the council are the ones responsible for installing these windows along that quarantine. So you see how it's like this
bullshit.
It is bullshit, but it's you know what it is? It's a fucking loophole. That's what it is. Because the quarantine is to stop, essentially view it this way. The quarantine is there to stop a direct mass invasion. But that is a direct violation to free will. So they're like, well, if we happen to put these windows that randomly, unpredictably pop up, but it would allow them to get in, that's not essentially breaking free will. That's just putting an obstacle in the way to make it a little bit harder. That's all we're doing. We're not stopping them per se because they can still get in.
So the Crusaders. All right. Let's see. Ra's starting to talk in circles here. So the Crusaders' main goal is to conquer, right?
Yes.
Wouldn't that just directly fuck all free will? If they were just coming,
it should.
If they're just coming in to conquer,
it should. But so this is tricky. But, and I'm not going to be able to word this correctly. You have to remember that the infinite energy, intelligence, whatever, infinite intelligence is derived of free will, which breaks down into service to self and service to others. You are able to manipulate context when it comes to service to self because justifiably so, by enslaving an entire world population that is kind of falls under service to self. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know this is a shitty way of explaining
I get it,
but yeah.
I get it. But I mean, I guess I do.
You do, but it's still fucked up.
Yeah. It almost takes away the free will of
it absolutely does. It absolutely does.
But it's in a roundabout way. It's their choice to either fight back.
That's true too.
Or submit.
That's true too.
So you could either give Genghis Khan the finger or just say,
all right, fine, fuck it. I'll be the slave. Whatever.
In your giant invisible cube.
Yeah.
You nerd.
So most of the objects that we see in the skies are from the Orion Group, which are here to spread their message of self-service. Apparently, there are UFOs that have been seen throughout time that are just thought forms. And typically the thought form ones are the ones that are sent from the Confederation. The actual physical ones are from the Orion Group.
Interesting.
Because the Confederation is slowly trying to, I guess I'll use the word awaken, like kind of make us aware of the unknown, you know?
Which almost seems a little not free will-ish.
Kind of in a way.
I mean, they are kind of guiding you in a just specific direction.
Yeah, I think they're loose around.
They're
influence.
sick of waiting on us, is what they're doing.
There is that too.
They're like, you guys are the worst rockheads. Can't put it together.
Yeah. There is a lot of that.
Here, mass UFO sighting.
There's a lot of that. What was that? Oh yeah.
And then you got the Pascagoula aliens who just they're just
like whoopsies.
Like, damn, we thought we were gonna get stopped. We didn't. Blew through the roadblock.
So when it comes to the Orion group and their messaging, like we think of like a lot of like when we think about this type of stuff, we typically think of technology leaps, right? How when we get influence from aliens, so to speak, most of it comes in the form of technology. But that's one of the ways that they kind of inspire us. Another way is through what and Don clarifies this, is literally what we would call black magic. So once again, it kind of jumps back to the infinite intelligence is a power source for everybody to tap into.
Yeah. Without question.
Raw even states that, and it fucking adds up. He states that even the people on the quote unquote black magic side, they write down these teachings. So it's literally like a spell book, right? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
That's what it is.
Interesting.
Furthermore, it's possible for people to be hit with both messages. It's so if you, like me, we'll take me for example. If I am a very positive person, I try to do what's right all the time. It is possible for me to be hit from the Orion group. The Orion group will send me messages of doom, essentially. Like I'll have a bunch of thoughts of just doom and gloom. Like everything is fucking wretched. It'll be that because they're trying to break me. However, let's say Steve is somebody who's like, I'm all about myself, bitches. Let's go. The Orion groups at that point is like, well, we don't have to fuck with Steve. We can just start telling him our messaging system. Like, hey, here's how you better yourself, homie. Like, you know what I mean? But they don't need to break you because you're already on their
broken.
I was going to say that, but
they know.
Right. But once again, it does make sense. Even crazier though, Don asks, and I like this question. Are there any among us right now? Because we've heard it forever. They're among us, right? Ra's like, no. But
always a but.
There's a but. And I think everybody's going to like this. The Orion group will use two entities to do their bidding on our planet. One
is a Democrat and the other is a Republican.
Yes. That is 100% facts. One is a thought form. The other is a robot of sorts. So here we go. Don's like, okay, all right. So what's with this robot?
Cell phones.
What the fuck does it look like?
Internet.
Ross says it can look like anything because it is just a construct. And so Don's like, so is this essentially like the Men in Black then? Ra's like, no. The Men in Black are a thought form entity which have some beingness to their makeup, which is what will allow them to materialize and dematerialize. So there is a layer of physicality to these thought forms.
So we can fight the Men in Black.
Yeah, but I don't know that's going to do very good because they have the ability to materialize and dematerialize, which I would assume that if you
powerbomb one,
pew-pewed at them,
it would just
most likely go through them.
Or if you powerbomb one,
they would probably just materialize through the table and be sitting Indian style on the ground and then laugh at you.
That would really fuck you up.
That would suck. That would suck.
So there is a thought form and a robot.
Yeah, and he doesn't really get into the robot other than it can be anything essentially because it's just a construct.
Was the thought forms the Men in Black?
Yes, they are thought forms.
Are they the ones that are the Orions are using?
I believe so, yeah.
What?
But it makes you further question every other entity out there as well. Because a lot of things in the paranormal world have the ability to materialize and dematerialize.
It also makes sense, though.
I'm not going to argue that.
Because when people see UFOs, essentially the chariots of the Orions, what immediately happens afterwards?
Yeah, Men in Black.
Come in and say, no, you didn't.
Right.
It was swamp gas. No, you didn't.
Right.
It was a weather balloon. No, you didn't. It was Venus, which is where Ra's from, oddly enough. Weird. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sus.
And this right here is where I about quit the episode.
This is where you said, hell with it.
Yeah, it fucking pissed me off because that was where the
when you say that.
That was where the conversation ended for the day, right? And then so you go to a new conversation, which is obviously a subject change, which pisses you off. But at this point, Donna's like, listen, and it is in the conversation. Like, I read it. I fucking read it. Listen, I'm sorry for the line of stupid questions that I ask. Like, he's being apologetic for these paranormal-esque questions.
Those are the best questions you've asked.
That's what I'm fucking saying. And that's why it pissed me off. I was like, you know what? I'm about ready to be done with this shit right now.
I was just going to commend how Don is the OG of this story.
Yep.
And now he reels it back and becomes a...
Oh, dude, it pissed me off.
Fucking lame.
Pissed me off so bad.
What a dork.
I powered on for a little bit longer. And at this point, I do find the phrasing cool. Ra describes them like itself as entities of sorrow. And it's not what you think. Like you think a particular way when you hear that. But it is
sad boys.
It is that they chase sorrow in aid. Like they hear the cries of many and they're coming to alleviate your issues. Like they literally want to be able to help everyone. They don't want to ignore one cry for help. And as far as it sounds, when it comes to Ra and Friends.
So we should have titled this
Ra and Friends.
Yes.
I know, it's good. But when it comes to them in particular, we are the only, I guess, complex they are currently aiding. I'm sure the Confederation is helping other ones, but it's like Ra is focusing its intentions on Earth.
It's interesting. I wonder if... So essentially the Confederation had to let Ra in, right?
Yeah.
I wonder if since free will is a thing, if every entity just gets their turn.
Here's what I think. Because they say most of the Confederation UFOs are thought forms. I think the quarantine only exists as the stopping of physical form. I think thought forms can come here when they want.
Interesting.
That's what I think.
Interesting.
I think thought forms are allowed to influence as they see fit.
Does he explain why we get to leave the quarantine like in our spaceships?
No.
Did we leave the quarantine? Is the moon still in the quarantine?
I don't know. That's a good question. It's a good question.
We get to shoot satellites out of the quarantine. What are the boundaries of the quarantine?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would assume it's on the other side of the moon. That makes the most sense, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that makes the most sense.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'm literally just shooting.
We're spitballing
here. But from moving slightly forward, there's something that gets said that I highly, highly, highly relate to, and I can appreciate it. You know, I've stated before when we've talked these lines that even if I died and I had the option, I wouldn't want to leave my family no matter what. I'm a very, very pack oriented person. And I just couldn't do it. I wouldn't be able to leave anybody behind. And Ra states that around 25,000 years ago, a harvest was attempted on our planet, but none were harvested. There were a few people, and then few don't. I assume it's still a large amount of people, but I don't want anybody to take that too seriously. Few were able to be harvested, but weren't. And so Don's like, why, if there were people that were ready for harvest, why were they not taken then? And it's because these people chose to stay. And they're now referred to as shepherds or the elder race. And they have gotten to a point where they are able to choose when they are harvested.
That's kind of dope.
And the reason why they won't leave is they will not leave until all of their, they call them selves, all of their other selves are harvestable. And Don's like, what are their other selves? And simply put, it's everybody that they love and are protecting. They will not leave this existence until those people are ready to be harvested alongside them.
Like ultimate loyalty.
Yeah, yeah. And I was like, I fuck with that. That's weird. But it's cool, right?
Yeah.
Like it definitely, and I'm not saying that I'm of the elder race, of course, but it's something that I strongly identify with.
We can't prove that you're not.
Right. That's also true.
That's
saying. Also true. But I highly identify with it. Like it definitely rings true to who I am and who I want to be. Then they kind of retouch into the quarantine from that point, which I'm kind of glad. But I'm beginning to understand a lot more of Raw at this point and the inner workings of it. And Don even asks, and I kind of did go over this earlier, but I'll re-go over it. Don's like, all right, so what's with the quarantine and the free will? And Ra's like, it's more of an obstacle for the Orion group because all influence is free will. So in this overall theory of understanding, everything is on the table because of our free will. Good and evil are allowed to exist and compete because in the end, it is free will of not only us, but of everything in said dimensions. Like legitimately every single thing is allowed free will, all of it, in and out. And interestingly enough, and this is a curveball for me, but we get into the fucking 10 Commandments and where it originated from. And this is going to be interesting. It came from the law. It came from the law of negative entities, impressing information upon positively oriented beings. Supposedly, the 10 Commandments came from the Orion group.
I was going to say, if there's a document that's really not that free willy, it's probably the 10 Commandments.
So,
not saying they're bad.
No, exactly. Yeah, we're not talking shit, but I would like everybody listening to conceptualize this.
It is a book of rules. It's don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this.
That's it. And in the end, that is not free will, right? And so the
sneaky Orions,
the being that received it was of extreme positivity. And they referred to this being as, I'm assuming, Moshe. Moishe. That's how Ra names it. He was open to receive impressions and receive the law of one in its most simple form. However, this information became negative due to his people's pressure to do specific physical things, which left him open to the negative in its ability to creep in and influence him. Because remember, and I'll be honest, it does make a lot of sense whether you like it or not. But an example of it is that writing down "thou shalt not" would be the opposite of what the law of one teaches or promotes, because free will is free will.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
And when you look at it in the whole like that, it does make a lot of sense.
Yep. That's the first thing I thought when you brought it up. I said, it's just a list of things that you're told not to do.
Yep. And it's kind of like, fuck, because it's supposed to be a good thing, the 10 Commandments, but if you look at it in this context, it does make sense. And I know there are a lot of people out there that are spiritual and not religious as well. Like there are people that, you know what I mean, that they would see that and go, oh shit, that does make sense. I do understand that. I do get that. It doesn't take away from your spirituality at all in the grand scheme of things, because at the end of the day, if you are a being of light, so to speak, you're not gonna stab your neighbor in the head. You're not gonna go rob from them, because that's not what you do.
And then it almost like playing devil's advocate, no pun intended. But if the 10 Commandments were handed down by God, what if Ra is trying to flip the script a little bit by putting out there, hey,
anything's possible.
Hey, this was actually given to you by some bad aliens.
Right.
Which, I mean,
I'm kind of viewing, I don't know, I kind of view it as like the intelligence infinity is kind of what we would consider God. Like that is our God, essentially.
Which is, I mean, it explains a lot if it is.
Yeah, I don't know. And I could be wrong. I don't, like, this is all, this is all new, right? This is all
subjective.
Yeah, and it's a lot to take in. And everything that
don't come at us.
Raw states is very cryptic. It's very dense.
Don't come at us because we're spitballing here.
Yeah,
right. We're not subscribing one way or the other.
No, of course not.
But if the infinite intelligent infinity is the source that is referred to as God, it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because it's completely, essentially, for lack of a better term, it's completely apathetic. Does not care about anything but providing the energy to beings who make it there. Doesn't care about good, doesn't care about bad, right? So all the tragic things that happens on planet Earth, where people are like, why could God let this happen? Is because this thing has no bearing on it.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter in the scheme of things. You know what I mean?
It just is what it is.
Yeah. When shitty things happen and people ask why, well, you've either got nobody's watching out for you, or whatever's out there doesn't care.
But it's also a heavy contemplation, because Ra is essentially stating for the people that are asking for help, Ra and friends are here to give that aid. So it's
almost putting it on a pedestal over top of everything else.
It's weird.
It just like that stems back to like the phrase like the God out there is listening, but it might not be the one you're looking for.
Right.
I
don't know. That in itself, I feel like, is an hour-long conversation to dive into that aspect of it alone.
Philosophical Holosky is a different than the paranormalogical Holosky.
Yeah. Anyways, another interesting series of questions is how many planets are essentially aware. And I'm assuming aware as in context of the intelligent infinity. Ra says there are about 67 million different planets that are aware, right? And Don's like, okay.
God damn.
So let's get into this. Can you break down in percentages how many of said 67 million planets are of the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh densities? Ra's like, sure, 17% are first density.
What is a first density being?
I don't know. Second is plants and animals.
So like
dirt.
Viruses.
I hope
like
it's just dirt.
Little germs. Yeah. Welcome to the dirt planet.
I'm self-aware dirt.
They're just
sucks.
cells. Yeah. I'm never going to be able to. Yeah. What do you have to do as dirt to make your life worth becoming poison ivy?
I don't know, dude. So it's 17% for the first, 20% for second, 27% for third, 16% for fourth, 6% for fifth,
Dwindling way down.
and the rest is withheld.
Well, there can't be that many percentages left, right?
Rob refuses to answer.
Well, if we're thinking we're going 100%, wait, I'll go back to them numbers. Let's add this up. Let's add this bitch up. What was the first one for one?
17,
Okay.
20,
Okay.
27,
Okay.
16,
Okay.
6.
Okay. So that is 86%. That leaves us with what, 14?
Yeah, over 2 densities.
Over 2 densities.
Yeah.
But
that information gets withheld. Also, it is withheld how many of those are negative. That's also withheld.
Interesting.
Yep. He will not elaborate on those.
Interesting.
Are
there I feel like I just need to tap into Rob because I got a lot of questions. Are there specific entities that are focusing on tier 1 dirt planets to help them move up?
I'm sure there are.
I'm
sure there are.
I want to be the dirt guardian.
I want you to be the dirt guardian too.
That would be I finally make it to the 4th density and they're like, Cannon, hop over there to fucking Mud World. That's where you're at, bud.
I hope it's what they tell you. Go to Mud World.
Hop on over to fucking Mud World and see what's up.
That's what I want to happen so bad. I want it to be go to Mud World. It just reminds me of, you ever watched Invader Zim?
No.
That reminds me of Invader Zim because he's like, I want to be a part of the invasion, and they're like, all right, go to this planet over here, and he's like, where's it at? And they're just like, way over here, and he's like, okay, I'm on it, and then he just drives forever, and he ends up at Earth, and it's not even anything like.
It's not part of the invasion.
No, it's not where he's supposed to be, but he's like, this is it.
That tracks. Send me to Mud World.
Okay. And then it obviously switches to a different line of questioning because of the new conversation, but it's kind of interesting. We go into daydreams.
He's just hammering
all over the place, dude. And
what is a 7th density being?
I have no fucking clue, dude.
I saw a woman on TikTok, talking about meeting with eighth dimensional being, 14 dimensional being. I can't remember, but she said they were basically just fractals of light, I can see that, like a mere being.
I could see that.
Which was
Rod does semi-describe himself as a being of light too, like visually.
I mean, if I were coming to Earth and trying to sell myself, that's how I'd say. I'd be like, yeah, I'm being a light. I'm good. You're sad. I'm gonna make you happy. And then I'm taking over the planet. We're going to Mud World.
Mud World inbound. But Don wants to know about daydreams and if they become reality.
Oh, he's getting way out there. Yeah. I thought he was onto something with the Bigfoot. Now he's really rolling.
Apparently they do. And it may not be. I think it just kind of is explained in probability, but it may not be to you now, but somewhere it does become reality. So as the example, Don's like, if I were to daydream of building a boat, would it then become? And Ross says that it would have, or shall occur. So he's like, so if I strongly daydream, it's just a fucking Holosky way of phrasing this. Because he goes like, if I were to build a boat, and Rob goes through that, then he's like, so if I were to strongly daydream about fighting an entity, would this occur? And Ra,
Fuck yes, it will.
Right? Ra's like, the entity's fantasy concerns the self and other self. This binding the thought form to the possibility-probability complex connected with self, which is the creator of this thought form. This then would increase the possibility-probability of bringing this into the third density occurrence. And all I hear from that is manifest it and it's going to happen.
What I got from this is Don is sick of the shit.
Yeah, he's ready to fight.
He's sick of the overwordy responses. He's sick of the like roundabout talk and answers he keeps getting. So he's in there. He's like, all right, bet. I'm thinking I'm about to whip the shit out of you, Ra.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens. Can I do that?
I'm about to fight you.
Yeah. Can I do that if I think about it the most? And Ra's like, well, yeah, you can, but you're probably not gonna like it.
Yeah, we should probably not do that.
Yeah. Because Don's just brooding over there, just cracking his knuckles. He's like, all you do is talk. All you do. You talk with no answers. And he's just gonna start throwing third dimensional hands at this fourth, fifth, sixth dimensional being.
I hope so.
We sanction those fights at Mud World. For anybody that wants to buy tickets.
There you go.
You got to figure out how to get there, but we're there.
But we got you.
Yeah.
So the Orion group does use daydreams of hostile or other negative natures to feedback and strengthen thought forms. Furthermore, the wanderers that we've talked about are essentially considered high priority targets for the Orion group.
Which makes sense.
Oh, yeah. Which literally seems like the entire spiritual battle we always hear about.
Yeah. Usually, you're not going to be able to sway a person one way or the other very easily.
Yeah.
If you have somebody on the fence, though, all it takes is a little push.
Yeah.
Push one way or the other.
And the wanderers were sent back for a specific purpose, too. So that with the evolution of us, so it does make it high priority for the Orions to be like, we need to shut these motherfuckers down. And just like that, here's another curveball. Don's like, yo, dude, like, let's talk about Jesus of Nazareth.
He's just swinging it now.
Throwing it out there.
I feel like after, like, while Carla's recharging her batteries, he's over there on, like, a Reddit forum. He's like, what do you want me to ask the alien guys?
Right. But he asked, he's like, Jesus of Nazareth came from the Confederation before incarnation here. And Ra's like, the one known as Jesus of Nazareth did not have a name. This entity was a member of the fourth density of the highest level of that sub-octave. And that's a whole nother, it is in the book. If you want to learn, like, there's essentially infinite levels of each density. And the easiest way Ra describes it, and I don't even understand it, but it has to do, like, is musical notes. And he said after the seventh, whatever, you go into the eighth, which is a new octave or some bullshit like that. Sense. Whatever it is. That's how he equates it. But anyways.
That's wild.
Yeah. This entity was desirous of entering this planetary sphere in order to share the love vibration in as pure a manner as possible. When Jesus incarnated here, he was a wanderer of no name. The Orion group instantly set their sights on him. They did everything they could to discredit him. According to Ra, Jesus became a healer at a very young age. He learned about his ability by actually hurting someone else. So while he was young and playing, it sounded like when he was playing with another child, Jesus touched him and fatally wounded that person, which made Jesus incredibly aware that there was a terrible potential within him. However, he became extremely determined to discover how to use this energy for the good, not the negative. Later on, the Orion group would then influence Judas and try to have Judas convince Jesus that, like, hey, the best way to go about this is for you to, like, tap into all that power that you can and rule over everybody. Like, we can be homies together. You can rule them. It's going to be a thing. And he's like, I know Jesus is going to do this. Well, obviously that didn't end up happening. It doesn't work because Jesus was so bent on being a being of light that you couldn't sway him in one way or the other.
Isn't it crazy and almost terrifying that one of the most influential entities to ever exist in human history is only a fourth tier being?
Yeah. Which now he would be, I'm sure he's way fucking higher up the chain now, but
that's crazy.
Yeah. And they even get into Yahweh and how Yahweh communicate. This is fucked too. But it also I know that in year statistics it's fucked. Probably doesn't make sense, but overall I feel like it makes sense. Apparently Yahweh was also in cahoots with the Confederation and did try to communicate with the planet, but I don't think it was very well received. And he did some pretty fucking crazy things. Like he would do genetic changes.
Oh.
Yeah, and by like some of it was by walking among us to cause genetic changes in consciousness. He also communicated through dialogue channels like Ra is essentially doing. But it sounds like Yahweh used, and the best way Ra could describe it was cloning processes. And he also, so that was a way of the genetic modification. Another one was through sexual means, which would be reproduction and genetic changes that way. Get this. It sounds like
Nephilim.
They were creating giants because they wanted to create larger and stronger organisms.
Nephilim.
But the Orion group ends up adopting this. And furthermore, it seems like Yahweh, although trying to help, seemed to, like I said, not really kind of hit home with everybody on the planet at the time.
Because he was banging them all.
Yeah, there is that. But also, if you think about it, in regards to the service to others, by creating a larger and stronger being, it actually ends up doing a disservice to the people because it creates a complex at that point where now you have a race of beings that view themselves superior. And so it creates this whole issue. So Yahweh and the Confederation disband this idea, but the Orion group then picks up idea.
Like, this sounds great.
Right. And this led people,
we're going to bang shit into superiority.
Yes. But it leads to people feeling, like I said, above, and the Orion group ends up using this, which then allows the Orion group to create holy wars. And that in itself is what really gets Orion's hooks into our planet, are the beginning of the holy wars.
Interesting.
And that's kind of where I jog off in the book. But I feel like overall, you kind of get the gist of this whole process that Ra is kind of laying out. And I feel like there should be more gems hidden in there. Right? But it all comes down to the line of questioning that is going to be asked to Ra. I'm trying to learn about giants and Men in Black.
Bigfoot. Yeah.
And it does go back and forth. And I feel like that inner paranormal Don wants to come out, but there's also like a responsibility to mankind section that Don's trying to put out too.
Don't do it, Don.
And so I feel like the overall, at least for me, the overall message is there. Like,
ask about the infield horror.
Yeah.
Ask about
that could be a thought for him.
The Beast of Bosco. Ask about the Loveland Frogman.
It could all be thought form.
We got to know this. Don. Donnie boy. I wonder if...
And apparently the conversations might even still be going on today with Rob. Because there's a website out there. There's a podcast. There's all types of shit.
I wonder if they made any other contact with any other entities.
I don't know.
You'd think once they got
more books, so I'm sure there's way more information out there.
Yeah, once they got the whole gist of contact down, you'd think they'd be just throwing it out there. Like, who it's like an AOL chat room. You know, who wants to talk tonight?
But I mean, I feel like at the very least, it gives everybody a lot to contemplate.
Yeah.
Because there's so many connections throughout this material that I've presented over the past 4 episodes. It does make you wonder. I mean, it could possibly suggest manipulation on Don and Carla's part, because it does deeply tie into just about literally everything. But at the same time, it takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of thought. And it just, I don't know. But it could also, could it be that Ra and friends are manipulators? I don't know. It literally comes down to your fucking free will. You decide.
I'm telling you right now.
What side of the fence?
I'm already projecting at fighting every off-world entity.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's already here. I'm manifesting it. Let's get it, because we're staying toxic toward anything out of this realm.
I mean, I'm not opposed to it.
They can get the smoke.
But if Ra's trying to teach me some cool shit, not opposed to that either.
Oh, we'll go in. You'll learn. We'll do it like this. We'll give a week of learning, then we're fighting.
All right, that's fine. I got to try to absorb as much as I can in a week.
And then I'm gonna just come out of the corner like Superman punch.
Good.
Just wham.
Then all of a sudden you see me evolve essentially into a Narius from Diablo.
Yeah. Of course.
And you're like, damn, I probably should have learned some shit.
I go to Super Punch Raw and he just de-manifests.
Yeah.
I'd be like, damn, I punch really hard. Instead, he's just going back to his home planet.
Yeah, or he's behind you shaking his head like this idiot. This guy. Idiot.
That does. I mean, it's awesome because it makes you rethink things that, were kind of like ingrained into our brain.
Yeah, and it also kind of like reaffirms some of your and my thought processes over the time too. Yeah. Like it really kind of slams home.
It is interesting. That was a good series.
I thought it was pretty decent.
I know a lot of people online liked it too, so they're really gonna tap into this.
I think this
look at this Goliath of an episode.
Yeah, this episode's gonna be something else. And this is probably one of the longest episodes we've done to date.
Oh yeah, outside of an interview or a live.
Yeah,
this is the longest OG episode.
Yeah, this is long.
That being said, we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah.
So if you have not listened to the first episodes of the series and you're here, you fucked up. You already screwed it up. I would tell you to go back, but don't even bother now. You're already out the door. But we'd like to hear your thoughts on it. I know people chime in and with different comments and stuff about how me and Kyle are processing it. Apparently we're really close, but also apparently we're not very close, depending on who you ask. So
fuck them.
Thanks for hanging out with us this Monday. This is a long one. This might be a drive to work and a drive back home from work.
Ain't nothing wrong with that.
No, just gotta keep on it. And check us out at all our social medias: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, TikTok, Discord, Reddit. Come and hang out with us. Be part of the cult. It's a good time. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay weird, and do not hesitate to fight the Men in Black.